Welcome to Power Up Your Practice, the go-to podcast for law firm owners and managing attorneys working on the business, not in it. I'm Ruby Powers, your guide into the heart of law practice management, bringing your insights from leading legal minds, trailblazing attorneys, and expert guests who provide practical perspectives on running your firm more effectively and efficiently. And before we dive in, I'm thrilled to announce that my latest book, Power Up Your Practice, is out and available on Amazon. It's packed with actionable advice for growing a successful law firm. Be sure to grab your copy today. And don't forget to subscribe to our newsletter for exclusive tips and resources. And if you're enjoying this podcast, we love your reviews. They help us reach more attorneys like you who are striving to build the practice of their dreams. Prepare to open your mind, be inspired, and power up your practice to the next level. Welcome, everyone. I'm excited to have Wendy Meadows here today. She is a best-selling author, speaker. She's a family law attorney and mediator. And we met at, I think it was ClioCon earlier in the year. Then we realized we had a lot of friends and colleagues in common. And so, Wendy, welcome to the show and tell us a little bit more about yourself.
I'm so excited to be here. Yeah, we met, I think, at the tail end of ClioCon. I was very lucky to meet you. I was in your keynote, and then I met you at that one of the after parties after. So that was really, really fun. I'm just glad I got the chance to meet you. A little bit about me. I'm an attorney in Maryland. I've been practicing 19 years, almost 20, which is absolutely bananas. Like, I don't know how it's been this long. And my very short journey, I started at a law firm in 2005, and I left there in 2013 to go solo. I've been solo ever since and absolutely, absolutely loved it. And other things have happened, throughout that course of time. And yeah, I'm excited to be here. And my biggest thing now is I no longer litigate, right? So a big decision I made several years ago is turn off the spigot to litigation. And now I'm primarily a mediator, best interest attorney, do some adoptions, but I'm no longer in court representing mom, dad, husband, wife.
Well, awesome. Thanks for that quick career journey. And I know you've done you've had a lot of bold moves, from becoming a partner after a handful of years, and then deciding to have your own firm, and then go into coaching and being an author of a book. Like, what sort of made you decide to do some of those big leaps of faith that not everybody feels comfortable doing?
I know. And it's like many, many leaps of faith in there, right? So I became a partner 5 years in. And that leap of faith was like seeing my mentor at the time and knowing I wanted to be a partner with her, even though that was scary, but it wasn't so scary because 2 to 3 years into practicing, I started thinking like a partner, right? I wasn't just thinking like an associate. I wasn't just thinking, oh, I'm here to collect a paycheck and leave. I was thinking, how can we make the firm better? What can we do? At the time, we were using time slips. Did you ever use time slips? Oh gosh,
No,
it was so awful. It was terrible, and it would crash our system all the time. And so I moved us to Clio. So I've actually been a Clio user since 2012. January of 2012 is when I had the firm adopt Clio. So I was always thinking about, okay, how can we make the firm better? And then several years went by, and what I always say is, especially, and I think you're a mom of 2 kids too, right?
Yeah.
And I think they're the same. My kids are 13 and almost 11. Are yours the same?
Mine are almost 12 and almost 14. Yeah. But
okay. They're
very
super
similar.
Close.
Right.
But I would say, so what I like to say is, like, when someone, has children and their youngest and they know they're done reaches 18 months, all of a sudden your brain comes back into your head and you're like, oh, I can think again. Right. Like, and you start thinking like an entrepreneur again. And at the time, like, I was feeling stuck in all sorts of ways. And I'm like, okay, I need to do something else. And so this is circa 2016. And I decided to become like a health and wellness coach. And it kind of happened on accident. And I freaking fell in love with it. Like, and again, it was like, so we talk like big, bold moves, right? But like, it was a little baby step. I'm like, oh, maybe I'll try this. Oh, maybe I'll actually ask people to do it with me. Oh, maybe I'll grow a team. Right. And then, like, one little step after another blossomed into this idea that, oh my gosh, I love coaching. Like, I love coaching. And the way I started coaching every morning started translating itself into my law practice and with my clients. And I became a better attorney. Right. So, like, in terms of making bold moves, like, take a little step, see, does it work or not work? Where else is it accentuated my life? And then that gives you the courage to take the next one. So the next one was in 2018 when I saw life was a little bit sparklier than I realized it was. And I said, okay, it's time for me to go solo. And it's time for me to go solo for two reasons. One, I want to make sure I like practicing family law. I'm not sure if I do or don't, and I need to do it by myself so I can figure it out. And I also knew something else was coming down the pike. I wasn't quite sure what it was, but I know the only way I could figure out what I wanted to do next is if I went solo and had the time and freedom to explore it, right? Like without hurting my partner. So the last thing in the world I would want to do is like work on this other project and then hurt them like financially or time wise, right? So I know I needed to do it alone. And then coaching came next, and the book came next. And every time I decide to push the envelope and it doesn't hurt, and I just keep pushing, pushing, pushing. And then the next thing happens, and it's been a really fun ride.
Oh, awesome. So what's an example of something that you were doing in your coaching that made you a better attorney or partner, or that sort of translated, into the practice?
Becoming a much better listener. I think I've always been goal oriented, with my clients, but in the family law world, oftentimes we're not goal oriented. Oftentimes when we're baby lawyers, we more tell the client, well, this is what it is, and this is what you should get, and this is what it should be. And we're telling them as opposed to really listening and understanding their story. Right. So with coaching, I really was curious about, my clients' stories, like their health and wellness journey. And now I'm more of like a coach, like a entrepreneurial coach, executive coach, life coach, whatever you want to call it. Right. But I'm so fascinated by people's story and why they are who they are and why they think how they think. And I started bringing those pieces to my family law practice. So instead of even just goal setting with my client, really understanding their story and the why behind it. And if I could understand their story, their goals, and their why, there's way more solutions ready, right? There's way more solutions at the table to help them to get from point A to point B, and point B is going to look, different for everybody else. So I think it just made me a better listener. It made me a better advocate. I was able to find other outside the box solutions, and it made me a kinder lawyer. I don't know if you've heard this at all in your practice, but sometimes attorneys aren't so nice to each other, and they're not so nice to their clients, right? They kind of beat their, in family law world, unfortunately, a lot of attorneys beat their clients into submission. And that part of the practice never felt good to me. And when I realized the coaching part felt really good, and I would get better results, and my clients would be happier with me, and I would get more referrals. Again, it just made me a kinder, better lawyer, all around.
Oh, that's great. And then you were saying as you progressed, you knew change was coming, and you wanted to go out on your own because you wanted to be prepared for some next project, where you were talking, was that the coaching, but then there was also being available to write the book, or where did that come into to play?
So the book came way later. What's fascinating, we're in 2004, right? No, we're in 2024. I have to keep looking at the time.
Yeah.
My book only came out September of 23, but I feel like I've had it forever. So I launched my coaching practice in 2020, the end of 2020, the beginning of 21. And I knew it was coming, but I didn't know in what form. I was health and wellness coaching at the time, and that was fun. But it wasn't my company. I was working for somebody else's company.
Okay.
And I knew whatever I grew was I wanted it to be mine. And I needed time and space to figure that out. And I hired my first coach. So I say my first 2 years of practice was putting my head down, working my butt off, right? And through COVID, especially this is 2018, 2019, 2020, worked my butt off through COVID. 2020 was a bang up year, but then I was so burnt out by the end, and I'm I can't do this anymore. And Wendy, yes, you like family law, but you don't like litigation. So that's where I started turning it down, and I hired my first coach. And through doing my work with her, she was like, Wendy, you realize what you are, right? You realize where you should be going. I'm like, no, where should I be going? Because I couldn't see it myself. She's like, you're a coach, you're a natural coach. Why aren't you doing this? And so I started getting my certification, once she kind of gave me the green light. And sometimes you just need someone else to see something in you first, right?
Yeah.
And then I built it at that point, and the book came later.
That's I feel like we've been having some parallel lives, and we just didn't know each other until a handful of months ago.
Right.
Yeah, I started Power Strategy Group in December 2020. And I was trying to bring my first book to life and be a resource for people during the pandemic because of just needing that community, wanting to not having to reinvent the wheel, wanting to be able to work on the business. And then, my second book coming out just, a couple of months ago. But that sounds great. We're sort of doing some similar things, but on our journey. But it does take a lot of guts to do those bold moves because, I think there's that status quo bias, and what I guess what probably helps. I mean, you tell me what you think, is like being rewarded for making a bold move, and then sort of feeling like something I need to do. I want to do this, but that's a little scary, but and then just sort of like making yourself go to the next level. And I think a lot about that. Was it the Raiders of the Lost Ark, and that taking that step in the that ravine thing? I think I even wrote about that in my book. But just sometimes you can't let fear be a paralysis, and that your greater potential is out there, and you haven't realized it yet, and you need to take that step to get there. But it can be scary.
Yeah, it's so scary, right? And actually, yeah, leap of faith was my theme in 2018. Like leap of faith, leap of faith. Like that was my consistent like twirling around in my brain. And I think the other thing is too, and I don't know if you've experienced this as well, but you have to take steps backwards too, right? So like,
Yeah.
even though like several years ago, I'm like, no more litigation. I'm done. And I'm still like working on these other things, but it gets scary, right? Because you start a new business, you expect it to like happen overnight, even though you know better. Like, it's not going to happen overnight, but you still expect it to, right? Because you see the genius in it. And then you get scared. You're like, oh gosh. And then a litigation case comes your way, or this has happened to me. I'm like, oh, okay, I guess I'll take this. Because, I still primary breadwinner, like need to feed my family, right? Like now we have a kid in private school, so like we have expenses. And I'm like, okay, I'll take another litigation case. And I'm like, why did I do that? Like a month or two in, I'm like, this was stupid. Why did I do that? But I think it's a natural part of the cycle. Like we have to go backwards too to remember, oh yeah, I didn't like this. Oh yeah, I didn't like this because, and yes, it is making sense. I'm taking a bold move here, even though it's still kind of like dibble dabble over here a couple of times to finally realize, okay, I'm actually done with this and I can move forward, right? Just to like keep looking for the evidence, right, of what is working and what isn't working. Like, oh yeah, I'm not a happy person when I'm in this other world over here.
Yeah, I think I've caught myself repeating the same mistakes, and then I get so frustrated. I'm like, I've already learned this. Why am I doing this again? Or it's like that, a few steps forward, one step back, and you're like, okay, here we go. We're getting closer, but it's frustrating to see that.
I know.
Yeah.
But I think we can't beat ourselves up, right? Like it's a part of the human experience. It's a part of our process. Like we're human, and I think it's really good evidence sometimes. I think it's sometimes really good evidence like, yes, we are going in the right direction. We're on the right path, and we have to be reminded of why other paths like aren't so hot for us, right? Like,
Yeah.
because we forget.
When I'm talking to like law students and just in general, sometimes like I feel like there's a lot of times like as a lawyer, you go to a good school, you go to a good law school, you get past the bar, you get a job, you start paying down the loans, and yeah, and then you're on like autopilot. Maybe you start your own firm, and then you're like on autopilot, but you don't create like these new goals. Or maybe it's like related to working less or making more money or something, or traveling more. But you're not really, we're not really consistent, or we don't make them SMART goals. But I think the more about all of this is just really knowing what you want, or giving yourselves that pause and space to think through what you want, and then making it happen. I'm trying to read, as in I just got started, the Mind Magic.
I don't have that one.
Dr. James Doty. I read, someone said don't get the Audible because there are just so many charts and so much technical stuff. And so I might actually get the Audible and the physical book, whatever. But you just the importance of I think a lot of times we're so reactionary. A lot of times we know what we don't want, but we never say what we want. And then if we don't say what we want, then we can't make it happen. And so I think it's sort of like a curse is a strong word, but I feel like it's sort of like nature to do that. And so I've been fascinated a lot about that. And I think goes back to like the goals and deciding what we do want and then making a path for them to happen. And I think it happens more, you make those bold moves happen when you are more in tune with what you really want. And you know that it's on the horizon and you sort of have a general idea of how to get there, or maybe it's more clear.
Right. I know a lot of people I've worked with, and I might ask, hey, what's your goal? Or what's your other thing outside of law? Like, what else does it do that like makes you excited, or like is your sparkle, for the sparkle and grit? And a lot of people just don't know. Like they don't know, and they have a really hard time figuring that out. And they need to be asked a lot of questions to figure out, well, what is it they want to do? And it's still like trial and error. And I think there's some of us who are really, I'm guessing you're one of them. Like both of us, we have made the bold moves, right? So we see something, we're like, okay, we want that. And then we automatically just start taking steps before we're even ready to start getting there. Right. And I think that's probably part of the secret. We step. And then all of a sudden, like, oh, shoot, you're here. Like, I remember when I told my partners when I was leaving, right? Like, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is really happening. The minute I get up from my computer and walk into that office and the words come out of my mouth, it's really happening. So it was even still like scary, at that moment. But a lot of us, like, we just don't know what our goals are yet because we're so like focused on status quo, and we need to take a step back and a breath and look around like, well, what the heck is it I want? And I think it's harder for others, and I think it's easier, probably for you and I, but I think both of our mission is to help other people learn, what that is.
No, that I agree with that. Before we continue, we have a small short word from one of our sponsors. Are you feeling overwhelmed by administrative, marketing, or other legal tasks? Well, you're not alone. Many lawyers are in the same boat. They're trying to build up their firm and they're trying to figure out how to get help to do so. So that's where Staffy comes in. So over 90 law firm owners, just like you, have turned to Staffy for help with their legal, administrative, marketing, and client-facing work. Staffy's mission is to help lawyers find balance while growing their firm with bilingual virtual staff and full HR support. And they take the hassle out of the team management and focus on what matters most, your clients and your practice. I've personally benefited from multiple staff support with about 8 virtual assistants over the last few years with my 2 businesses, including my law firm, Powered Law Group. Now schedule a free consultation with Staffy. It's stafi.cc, and you can use the code RUBY, that's REBY, for a $500 off coupon. So, and actually that makes me think about how I agree with you that a lot of people don't know what they want. And I think sometimes I have some like vision goal blocks and I'm like, why can't I see it? And I put some exercises in my book of like questions to help inspire, try to figure out more about what your passions are. But I think it's super really happens to us, law firm owners or lawyers. Like we just get so into helping others and doing that thing and get into the grind. And then, I think also thinking about when my kids turned 5, it's like after that milestone, it was like, then I got my life back a little bit more. And you were talking about getting your brain back after 18 months, I get you. And, and just like, they're going to be out of the house in 4 to 6 years. And what else am I going to do, besides shuttle them around, feed them and love them and everything like that. So we have to, and this makes us better people, and we need to have those short-term, long-term goals. Well, so one of the things we both do is coaching, and I do find some people hesitant to it because they're like, why should I pay, or what can they do? What type of person, what experience do they have? What would you say to someone who's a little hesitant, or and maybe some of the benefits of coaching?
When I can say for me, I'm guessing you can say the same thing. Every coaching opportunity I've been a part of, right? Every coach I have hired has changed the trajectory of my life for the better. And I can see it. And I can look. So I've had various coaches, and there is like, I can point to one sentence from each of them where the whole package was worth that one sentence, because that one sentence was the thing that triggered my brain. I'm like, oh my gosh, yes, this is it. I've had some bad coaching too. And even the bad coaching I still get the one sentence, right? But like that one sentence, like I can change my trajectory. I'm like, okay, this is where I'm going now. And I can see it, like playing it back. Like my life wouldn't have taken these twists and turns to get where I am today, but for those conversations. And I think what coaching, I think people have this notion of coaching that it's like a destination and you do it and you're done and then you're fixed forever. And like, oh, I'll sign up with a package for you and then I'll be fixed. Like, no, it's like part of the journey, right? It's part of the journey. And it's like having amazing, my best coaching sessions, or when it's like, it feels just like a really high level, amazing, deep conversation. And you have this like independent thinking partner. And I'm sure you do the same. Like when I'm talking to that person, I care just as much about their future and their trajectory as they do, like in the moment and even after. But like, when else do you get the time and space to have those conversations that are 100% about you, right? And not about anybody else. And it can be like, it's a two-sided conversation, but with the goal of making one person better, right? So I get people's hesitancy, but I really think people think, number one, that life coaches or the coaches have it all together. And like we're human too. We have our struggles as well. But it makes us more easily able to issue spot in somebody else. And that, it's a journey. It's not one and done and fixed. It's really high level conversations to change the trajectory of your life. So the rest of your life is remarkably better. And that's how I view it. I'm not sure if you
No,
view it the same way.
I completely agree. And I think that once you've had a good experience and it gets you a little addicted to it, because you're like, oh, I like that one sentence or that one like altering thought that sort of was a pivotal moment for you to build upon for the next thing. Like, I can think of a lot of things I learned from one of my first business coaches, and that I still even say or incorporate in some capacity in what I do. And I really think it sort of helps. That's part of the reason why I wrote the books I did. Like I wanted to be a way for people to not have to reinvent the wheel. Because like I like what you had, the way you described about the, there's a two conversation, but they're really trying to improve that, the one-sided, but that you're genuinely engaged in that. And I think it's a way to take the wisdom and the guidance to a whole nother level, but it doesn't really come from a book. Like some people, love a book, but it's not necessarily a two-way conversation. And so, but it can be, learning as you go. I think the other thing that's important is like I look at it a lot like parenting and baby proofing. People need different things at different levels, and it might not register the wisdom that you're hearing. Like you might have to hear it 5-6 times, and then that sixth time, it's like, oh,
I mean,
why did you
included? Right?
I had to tell you that before. Right. You just really went into your head.
Like the coach I'm working with right now, 5 other coaches, I'm sure, have said the same thing to me, and I wasn't ready to hear it yet or do it yet. And then coaching from this individual, I'm like, oh yeah, it makes sense now. Like it makes sense. And maybe you just need to hear it in a different way. But no, and I agree with you too. Like we've probably both coached people who've never received coaching, and then other people who've received like lots and lots of coaching. And people who've never received coaching, it's so cool because like we have all of this depth of knowledge from all the coaching we've received and the books we've read and our trial and error, right? That we've done 21 million times. And now we can plug into this person. We just have to be careful not to be a fire hose to this person, or else, we'll scare them away, and to this other person who has heard it all, but then like they're finally putting it all together. And we are the person saying it in the way like, oh, I get it now. Like I get it now. Okay. And then, it's neat to like do all the different, to coach all the different like varieties of people in this profession especially. So I do think, and I've coached lawyers and non-lawyers, but they're lawyers, we just have a special language, right? We have a special language, we have a special understanding. I talk a lot about my brain, but like my brain definitely came back online when my youngest was 18 months, but also my brain, I could feel my brain shifting during law school. Like, do you remember that? Like I could literally feel like my pathways changing, and like I thought differently and I looked at the world differently. And I do think we all speak the special language that is, not everybody has it, right? You had to go to law school and be an attorney to understand to think in this way.
Yeah, and then who goes to law school, and then how they teach us to think or analyze, and then it gets fortified even more in the more practice we have. So,
Right.
and I think a constant thought I have is between the the lawyer brain and the entrepreneur brain, there's a lot of a conflict there. I sometimes think I should have gone to business school instead of law school, because when my husband went to business school and I was going to law school, and it was just a whole bunch of PowerPoints and presentations. I was like, that looks good. Here I am like studying by myself and having to like, for the Socratic method. I was like, should have signed me up for that 2-year program over there with the PowerPoints.
I know. But we get to be both. Like,
No
how
offense
freaking
to
cool
MBAs
is that?
out there, no offense to MBAs.
But Ruby, we get to be both. Like, we get to be lawyers and entrepreneurs.
I know.
And
The
like,
best of both worlds.
it is. It really, and it took me a long time to realize that, because there was a time for a while I'm like, why did I go to law school? Like, why wasn't I a writer? Why wasn't I a food blogger? I was really mad for a long time that I didn't write for Food and Wine magazine. Like, why did no one tell me this was a job? But like, yes, I'm sure it's a job, but and you'd probably see it too, like the credibility of being an attorney, like it puts you into rooms that you wouldn't be in otherwise. People take you more seriously because you have like the Esquire like after your name. And I don't know, for a long time I fought it and was like annoyed about it. Like, why didn't I choose a different career? But now I think I've fallen in love with being a lawyer again, especially in the last couple of years, like mediating or like doing some uncontested divorces, because I do really like it. Like, I really, really enjoy this profession, and especially in the coaching world. Sometimes coaching is really squishy, right? Like, it's more like it's not as much. We see results, but it's not like ROI results. And then in the law, it's like, okay, we got you from here to here. I got you divorced. I got you a marital settlement agreement. I got you your stepchild adopted. Like, so I think it's nice to have both, right? The coaching practice and the lawyer practice.
Results versus, which sort of things can be a little more subjective and vague and hard to gauge the value, which I think is another reason why some people are hesitant, to sign on for that. Yeah. But I think one other theme of like just what we're talking about is like, for someone who maybe hasn't even become a lawyer yet, because I teach at law school, is like you can reinvent yourself within your career. Like I've been practicing 16 years, you said 19. So, we're both like authors, coaches. We have our own practice, those types of things. You can decide not to take these types of cases and take more of those cases. And so you can find what you enjoy, what brings you joy, and what you enjoy in general in your practice. And I think that's important, because a lot of times you get burnt out if you don't. I mean, I know, that's part of the book.
Yeah, exactly. 100%. And this is going to come as a huge shock to you that I also am teaching law students.
Oh, okay.
I really feel like we're sisters, like in different,
right,
like in different states. But no, I hear, and that's what I really try and preach with my students too. And also it's like finding that other thing outside of law that excites you. And I think where people get really scared is like, but Wendy, I'm already a lawyer. I'm already running a practice. I'm already a mom. I'm already doing all these things. And you want me to add something else that has nothing to do with anything? Yes, I do. Because like, it lights you on fire, right? And when you're lit on fire about this other thing, whatever it might be, like maybe you're writing a book or growing a business, like that was the health and wellness business for me for a while. But if you have this other thing, it makes everything else so much more exciting. And then it makes the work feel so much easier, right? And it's like, it elevates everything else when we have this other thing that we figure out. And I think it keeps away the burnout as well.
Oh, I for sure think that's a critical you have to have some other reason to wake up every day and do something fun and exciting, and it keeps things. And I know like all those other things I do, I bring it to the table in my practice, just like you did with the coaching to being a better, boss and lawyer. And it just helps bring different skill sets, I think, to the table and points of view. Well, before we start closing out, I want to ask, what's a favorite like podcast or book that you recommend?
Yeah. So right now, books, like I read this book this summer called The Sparrow. It's fiction. It's probably one of the best books I've ever read in my life. Have you heard of it? By Maria Russell.
No.
I got it at a used bookshop. I don't even know why I picked it up, but it's insane. It's a really, really, it's sort of like sci-fi-y, morality. I don't know, I like that kind of thing. And then I think my favorite nonfiction book, and the one I recommend again and again, is The 5-Second Rule by Mel Robbins. I mean, that book changed my life. Have you read? But don't buy it. Listen to the Audible. So it's the opposite of the other one.
Okay.
Because amazing.
Okay. I will definitely look at it. We'll go ahead and finish this in. So like, why is it so good?
I mean, it changed my life. It changed my life in terms of productivity, right? And it also I don't want to give away the whole premise, but like you have 5 seconds to act on anything, right? So the minute you have an amazing idea in your head, you have 5 seconds to act on it or it won't happen. So that helped me in terms of all of a sudden I was like banging out discovery. All of a sudden I was having difficult conversations. All of a sudden I was like washing my face at night when I didn't want to, or like doing the workout or getting out of bed. So like it is what I recommend hands down to my people who procrastinate, like that book. But Audible is way better. Mel has an amazing voice, and she was actually an attorney first, and then she reinvented herself, several times over. But the book, tell your people not to buy it, or they're like, it's really confusing. Like, and I bought it. So I was, I want to like read it now too, because this book meant so much to me, and it's just not a good read. It's not like normal writing. It's like all these social media posts, and it just doesn't.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So get it on Audible.
Audible,
what's your favorite board game?
So I don't have a favorite board game. I hate Monopoly. Because it takes so damn long, and my son always wants to play Monopoly.
I know. I started to too, but if I say that out loud, then like almost all my guests are going to hate me, because that's like the number one choice. So
everyone likes Monopoly. Oh, so they can all hate me. It's okay. They can all hate me. I'm fine. But my favorite game, I hope they don't hate me, is Egyptian Rat Screw. It's a card game. And
okay. I've heard of it, but I don't know what it is off the top of my head. Okay.
And I would forget, like I'd have to like redo it. I'm like, oh yeah, it's so much fun. I love card games, big time. But yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay.
Monopoly
okay.
Unless it's the fast one.
Well, how can people find you and follow up, find your book, and reach out?
Yeah, my book's on Amazon, so it's Sparkle and Grit. This pink guy on Amazon, the easiest way to find it there. And then they can find me on LinkedIn, Wendy S. Meadows. I'm also Wendy S. Meadows, I think, on all the socials, Facebook and Instagram as well. And I post slightly different content in each channel, depending, right? Like LinkedIn's more professional, Instagram's a little bit more like motivational and like day in the life of, and showing like how a busy lawyer gets it all done. So yeah, but my name.
Awesome. Well, it's always a pleasure. We should hang out more, and hopefully I'll see you at some conferences or something like that. But I think you have a wealth of wisdom to share, and I think it was important to give examples of how those bold moves, and not letting fear hold us back. And just because we've done those things in the past doesn't mean we don't have more bold moves in our future. That it's exciting.
Isn't that exciting? Yeah, it's so exciting. I'm excited to see what I'm so like, I'm guessing you're the same way. Like 2020, most people are waiting to 2025 to like figure out 2025. Like I'm figuring it out now. Like my coach and I are sitting down. We have a plan. We're going after it. And like, I can't wait. Like I've never been this excited about the next year this early in the year. Right. Or like, November. So
no, I agree. I'm going to use the last couple weeks of the year to really get organized on the firm and personally, and with Power Strategy Group and Power Up Your Practice and all that good stuff. Well, thank you so much, Wendy, and definitely reach out to her and get her book. It's easy to spot, The Sparkle and Grit. It's that pretty pink one on Amazon. Well, thanks everyone for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you for tuning in to the Power Up Your Practice Law Practice Management Podcast. I'm your host, Ruby Powers, and it's been a pleasure sharing this time with you. If you've enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to leave us a review, tell someone else about us, and we'd love to get this podcast shared with others to reach more listeners like you. Don't forget to subscribe to our newsletter for exclusive content, tips, and updates straight to your inbox. And exciting news, our book, The Power Up Your Practice, is out and available on Amazon. It's packed with strategies, 25 chapters, to help you elevate your practice and achieve your goals. So join us next week as we dive into more advice and insight on law practice management. We'll see you next time.